All right, good night, everybody. Thanks for coming. Good morning. I'm Chris Carl from WDEL, Director of News and Operations and Programming and anchor for Delaware's Afternoon News. It's my honor to be here with this delegation and with you this morning. Thanks for taking time out of your weekends to come and get out of the rain for a little while and join us for what we hope will be a very informative, if not entertaining, 90 minutes. No introduction necessary, but let's welcome our panel, starting with our senior U.S. Senator, Chris Coons. Our newly elected junior senator, Lisa Blunt Rochester. Making a triumphant return to her alma mater, our U.S. Representative, Sarah McBride. The 76th governor of Delaware, Meyer. And the Attorney General for the state of Delaware, Jennings. Each will be giving us some opening thoughts, some opening statements and initial thoughts in just a moment. And then we want to hear from you. And we have two microphones at the front here, so you can start making your way up if you're so inclined to come up. We also have, for those who may have mobility issues, we have a roving microphone. So if you don't think you can make it to the microphone, just kind of raise your hand. And we've got two in the back, and we'll find you and make sure we get to you. But first, let's start with some opening statements, and we start with Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Delaware, for coming out this morning. Thank you for giving us your time, your energy, your attention. Let's hope we can have a constructive and positive conversation. We'll try and keep our answers as short as we can and try to get to as many of your questions as we can this morning. I'm honored to serve with this incredible and talented group. We are blessed to have a congressional delegation, a governor, an attorney general who respect each other, who listen to each other, and who work in concert. And as I watch other states try and deal with these unpredictable, even unprecedented times, our relationship and our common purpose has been a great strength for us and for Delaware. I've been elected 25 years. I've never been through 100 days like the ones we are going through right now. I can't begin to explain to foreign heads of state when they come to visit what's happening when our president threatens to conquer Canada, or to invade Greenland, or to seize the Panama Canal, when he says he's going to run for a third term, when he deports people who are citizens or who are here legally, when he disregards orders of courts. It is hard to explain. Earlier this morning, I went to the Pancreatic Cancer Action Walk, not a partisan event, families touched by pancreatic cancer, and had to share with them that DOGE has cut to zero the congressionally directed research funding for pancreatic cancer. There are so many things that have been impacted in recent weeks, it's hard to even keep track of it all. From Head Start to daycare funding, from scientific research to national service, there is a long list. And we were just talking backstage about how AmeriCorps, the volunteerism program, has been cut in half, cut by 40% in the last day. And our Attorney General is about to launch a lawsuit to try and block this, and our governor is leading efforts to defend AmeriCorps here in Delaware. I think it's important that I say I understand that elections have consequences. President Trump was elected. There is a Republican majority in the Senate. I'm a member of the Appropriations Committee. I have helped write appropriations laws, Congress after Congress, and I fully expected with that change that we would follow the law and the process, that there'd be 6 to 9 months of hearings, of meetings, of debate, negotiations. Some things would be trimmed or changed because the new president and the new majority have new priorities. That's how our system works. But how our system doesn't work is that an unelected group called DOGE, led by the richest multi-billionaire on earth, comes charging into agency after agency, takes all their data, your data, and shuts them down. From the CFPB to the Foreign Aid Office, USAID, to AmeriCorps, to others. So I've supported and appreciated the leadership of our Attorney General in suing to block these actions because they're illegal. They're unconstitutional. They don't follow the law. And I'm willing to work across the aisle to do things that are good for our state and our country, but I'm not willing to tolerate things that are illegal, unconstitutional, or in my view, when you slash things like pediatric cancer research, daycare, Head Start, or our food bank, immoral. So folks, thanks for your attention. We've got constituent caseworkers here from our different offices. So if someone's got a question that's really specific to you, a tax issue, a passport issue, Medicare, Medicaid, really specific to you, Chris will direct you to one of our constituent casework staff who can help you. But if you've got questions for all of us, we look forward to answering. Again, I'm grateful for your attention, and I look forward to a great conversation this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Blunt, Rochester.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You know, this morning I was thinking about what I would say. First of all, I am grateful for your participation in our democracy and in our country. The fact that you are here this morning, you didn't have to be here. The fact that some of you are out marching and mobilizing and standing up and supporting organizations that are supporting our country and the issues that you care about. I want to start off with a word of gratitude and say thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to my colleagues who are on this stage, because as our senior senator said, this is not what is happening in other parts of the country necessarily, but we are recognizing that we are in this together. And so when I was first elected to Congress in 2016, many of you will remember it was after the unexpected loss of my husband. So many people had dealt with the economic downturn. Our city was being called murder town. Like, there were so many challenges. And I remember I came in with Donald Trump. This ain't new to me. I came in the minority. This ain't new to me. But we were still able to get things done. The word at that time was unprecedented. Everything was unprecedented. I said, if I heard that word one more time, I was going to just knock somebody in the head. Unprecedented, unprecedented. The word today is uncertainty. Uncertainty. Uncertainty for the small, medium, and large businesses up and down this state who told me, we can't hire people right now because with these tariffs, we don't know what to expect. We don't even know if we'll be able to have to pass cost on to consumers. Uncertainty. Uncertainty for the thousands and thousands of federal workers who support the programs that our senator just talked about, who make sure that our planes don't fall out of the sky, who make sure that we don't have nuclear accidents, who make sure that we support our country around the world. Uncertainty for their jobs, for our services, for our research, for our economy. Uncertainty. And while there's all this uncertainty, this thing I do know for sure. This I know for sure. Number one, I know who's in control, and I'm going to say that because I believe that, because that's part of my history, that's part of my legacy. Make it plain. We've been in moments where it was hard. But what kept us going was the collective, was the power of the people. So today, I want you to remember your power. We're going to talk about that on this stage. And I want you to know, for me, I am grateful. Some have said to me, Lisa, I'm praying for you. Others have said, Lisa, give them hell. So we receive all of that. And we are going to continue to make sure that we have a strong economy, that we lower the cost of goods for people, but also that we have a democracy. Because when I was trapped up in that gallery on January 6th and all I knew to do was pray, instead of leaning back for democracy, I leaned forward. And that's what we're going to do today. We're leaning forward.
Thank you, Senator. No stranger to the stage, Sarah McBride.
Good morning, Delaware. It is a privilege to be with you all this morning. I want to start by thanking you all for taking time out of your busy schedules for this important conversation. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today to facilitate this dialogue. Thank you so much to my alma mater, Cab Calloway, for opening up this beautiful auditorium. I promise I will not sing and dance on this stage. That is the fastest way to turn this room against me. And I am so grateful to our state troopers and the Wilmington Police Department who are here. Thank you very much for your service, for protecting us. And I am so grateful and honored to be on this stage with these four wonderful, brave, fierce elected officials. We are Team Delaware. And when I ran for this seat last year, I said wherever I was that I would work with anyone who was willing to work with me to help Delaware. But when I saw people hurting our state, I would stand up to them. And all of us here, we understand that in this moment, with the stakes as high as they are, it is our job, it is our responsibility to stand firm and to stand up for the people of this state, regardless of who they voted for in the last election. Because right now, what we are seeing in Washington is an agenda that puts so much of our progress as a state and as a nation at risk. Right now, we are seeing illegal, unconstitutional, cruel, and harmful actions by the executive branch that hurt real people, hurt Delawareans in every corner of this state, in urban, suburban, and rural areas. They are hurting people who they believe didn't vote for the president in the last election, and yes, they are hurting people who voted for this president in the last election. We are here united to stand firm for the people of this state, because right now, this administration is illegally stealing critical funds from the people of our state. They are withholding nearly $10 million from farmers here in Delaware to improve their infrastructure and lower their energy bills. They've stolen millions of dollars owed to this state for public health infrastructure to prevent the spread of infectious diseases. They are defunding critical programs like AmeriCorps and life-saving nonprofits, from domestic violence shelters to homeless shelters. And of course, as Senator Coons alluded to, they are withholding nearly 1 million meals from the Food Bank of Delaware to feed vulnerable and hungry people across this state. And they are doing that because, one, the cruelty is the point, but two, they know that when people are hungry and out of a job and angry, that is the fuel of Trumpism. And through it all, as they steal money from the people of this state, they are trying to use vulnerable people across this country as political pawns. They are targeting vulnerable people. They are abrogating due process. And when they do that, none of us are safe. And so we are united with you all to stand up for Delaware, to stand up for our democracy. And one thing that we are already seeing is, as the Congresswoman said, as Cory Booker said on the floor of the United States Senate, the power of the people is greater than the power of the people in power. And we are already seeing, we have joined you all at rallies, and we are already seeing that when we fight back, when we fight smart and fight hard, we can stop some of the worst excesses of this administration. Our Attorney General is leading in the courts. You all are leading in communities across this state, and we continue to lead in Congress. We join together when this administration slashed funding for manufacturing jobs here in Delaware and across the country. We led our colleagues to fight back. The administration reversed course, restoring those funding, protecting hundreds of jobs in this state, $75 million in economic activity. And just 2 weeks ago, I was on the floor of the House of Representatives to vote for a second time to protect Medicaid, which covers 1 in 4 Delawareans with health coverage, and I will go to the floor as many times as it takes to defend Medicaid and to defend health care for Delawareans. And I'll close on this, because I know it's hard in this moment to see the light at the end of the tunnel. They are engaging in unprecedented actions. But we know that when the people rise up, when the people mobilize against politicians in power who are bridging people's rights, who are violating the Constitution, we know we can stop it. And because you have lifted your voices, not only have we been able to reverse some of the actions of this administration, but you have educated the public, and the public has turned against this president's actions. He is more unpopular now than any president at this point in an administration. And when that happens, we extend the runway of our democracy. We give us more time to fight smart and to fight hard, to protect our progress, to protect our rights, to protect jobs, and most importantly, to protect Delaware. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Representative. And now the second best Newcastle County executive on this stage. Right. I'll let you debate that later. Governor Matt Meyer.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I saw former governor, former senator, former U.S. rep, former treasurer Tom Carper yesterday, and he said, you know, I watched your State of the State, Matt, and it was the 9th best I ever saw. It's fantastic to be with you here. Let's give it up for Senator Ray Siegfried, who also came out today. State Senator Ray Siegfried. And any other elected officials who are here today, thank you so much. My name is Matt Meyer. You know I am the governor of your state. What you may not know is I am the only sitting governor right now who is a member of AmeriCorps. I served through the AmeriCorps program and became a teacher. That's how I initially got into teaching. And I can draw a pretty straight line from that service in AmeriCorps to where I sit and what I do today. It shapes what I do in every way. There are hundreds of thousands of Americans across our country like me who went through the AmeriCorps programs, who learned lessons of direct service that they're now carrying to make our country a better, stronger, more vibrant, and more abundant country. And as was stated before, every day we're hearing more news about the president's attempt to slash and destroy this amazing gem of a program. In 1960, when President Kennedy was running for office, a few days before the election, it was a very close election, as a few people in this room may remember. He went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he showed up to his speech there days before the election, hours late. It was late into the night in an October in Michigan that was not warm. But thousands of students waited up for President Kennedy to come, or then Senator Kennedy. He stood up and he gave a speech, and off the cuff, outside of his prepared remarks, he said, what if among you students we found a few people willing to go across the world and serve the very free ideals, the basic ideals of America, and do so around the world? Would any of you serve? And people raised their hand and cheered. And then he continued with his speech and got elected president. And a few weeks into his term as president, several of those students who heard that speech, they mobilized, they organized, and they demanded that the president create this program to send Americans abroad. The president got lost in the shuffle, and so this small group slowly mobilized and built a larger group of students across the country. And that mobilization turned into a program that today you may know as the Peace Corps. That Peace Corps, some decades later, President Clinton looked at that program, looked at Volunteers in Service to America, VISTA, combined them to become the Corporation for National Service and what we know today as AmeriCorps. But I mention that because it started as a people's movement. And so many of these programs that our president is trying to eradicate and eliminate started not from elected officials, but they started from people, from students, from people with great ideas, Americans with ideas over the course of our hundreds of years about how to move this amazing society forward. And now one person backed by billionaires is trying to do anything he can to serve their interest and not our interests. And as I work with, honestly, the most amazing federal delegation that any state in the country has, and as I collaborate, yeah, give them a round of applause. And as I collaborate with an attorney general who, when she ran for office, I don't think imagined that this would be what she's doing every single day, but truly on the front lines of not just making sure that the rule of law is followed for every Delawarean, but for every American. Thank you, Kathy. As I do that, what I see, and what I know we all see, is this freedom. And these programs ultimately all emanate from you, from each and every one of you. The ideas you come up with as individuals, the organizing you do in groups to claim our state and our country back. Listen, like a lot of people on stage, I didn't really know this is what I was getting into. When I announced I was running for governor, I wanted to deliver better schools for Delawareans. I don't think our public schools are cutting it today, notwithstanding this beautiful auditorium, Cab Calloway Charter, extraordinary schools, Sarah. I wanted to deliver better health care. Some of you may know my wife is an emergency room doctor. As I stand here right now, she is in Christiana Care serving her patients. I think rent is still too darn high for too many Delawareans. And I just want you to know that in spite of this crazy time, in spite of the fact that one of every three dollars that we have to spend in state government comes from the federal government. In spite of hearing almost every day that there are 62 public health workers whose jobs are basically gone because of the federal government, our AmeriCorps program is being slashed in half. Those volunteering have to leave their job sites within days. Despite all of this, we are going to find a way as Delawareans to come together to celebrate the freedom not just of the few, but of everyone, and make sure that we deliver for Delaware and show this country the magical, abundant place that we can be. All of you coming out today means the world to me. It means the world to those working every day for you. We know that you're watching. We know that we need to do everything we can to stick to the ideals by which this country and our state were founded. And when Washington diverts from those ideals, we're going to keep our heads down. I'm eager to hear your questions. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Governor. And as the governor mentioned, her office has been extremely busy over the last 100 days. Attorney General Kathy Jennings.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you to our delegation. Thank you, Governor Meyer, for inviting me to participate today with all of you. We truly are Team Delaware. I get questions from all attorneys general all over the country. How do you work with your congressional delegation? Do you communicate with your governor? Hell yeah. We do it all the time, and we are speaking with one voice because we are representing the causes you care about. This is a deeply, deeply unsettling time in our country, frankly, across the world. And there's one reason for that. People voted for a president. They did not vote for a king. They did not vote for a dictator. They did not vote for a man who completely disregards the rule of law and the Constitution we all love and respect. And so it has fallen upon attorneys general throughout the country. They're all Democrats, but they really shouldn't be. The harms that he is inflicting in red states and blue states alike. And the people being deeply affected are Republicans, Democrats, independents across our country. Unfortunately, my colleagues on the Republican side have not seen fit to join us, so we're going it alone. But we are strong. We are strong in our single will to make sure that when he breaks the law, we hold him to account. On day one, when President Trump removed birthright citizenship from the Constitution, what did we do? We sued. We are winning that lawsuit, and in mid-May, it'll be in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. On day two, when he ordered the Office of Management and Budget to freeze all federal funding to states, including Delaware, what do? We sued. And right now, that federal funding is flowing to Delaware. I think we sued him 16 or 17 times at this point, and on Tuesday, when we file the AmeriCorps lawsuit, it'll be 18 times. When we sue, we win because there are judges in our country who believe in the rule of law. They have been so courageous, and they have been attacked. There are attorneys general in our country who believe in the rule of law, and they have been so courageous, and he's gone after them. We cannot allow this to happen. And when he goes after the people in this state, you better believe we're going to fight. And when he goes after your families, you better believe we're going to fight. No one in this state, no one in this country should be afraid to say your mind. But he is penalizing, he is prosecuting people for saying what they believe in. We cannot allow this to stand in our country and in the state of Delaware, which is so strong. And we know when he goes after Medicaid, Medicare, your Social Security, he is ruining so many people's lives. When he fires them with glee, he is ruining lives. And when he sends Elon Musk into the United States Treasury to get your personal information, he is ruining lives. He is deeply unpopular right now. And boy, that's the only good news I've heard in a while. He is destructive. You are here because you care about that. You are here because you care about yourselves, your families, you care about everybody in our state. We can do nothing without you. We can do everything with you. And so let's rise up and fight the good fight that in our lifetime is the biggest fight we're going to have. And that is to march, to stand up, to make your opinions heard. We want to hear from you today. We want to know what your concerns are and how we can best help you. So right now, I'm going to shut up and sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. Indeed, we want to hear from the floor. We got mics here and here. We would ask that you keep your questions focused and on point, because we want to get to as many questions as possible. And our panel has agreed to keep their answers focused and on point. We don't need any Cory Booker filibusters. We only have 1 hour, not 25, so we'll keep it quick. We would also ask that when you ask your question, identify yourself, tell us your first name, where you're from, and the next question. We'll go stage right, ma'am.
Okay, my name's Marilyn. I'm from Newark. This is sort of it's going to be a little hard to explain, but Republicans in Congress are not all MAGA. There are MAGAs, there are Republicans, there are Democrats, and some of them are capable of shame. Elizabeth Warren said at some point recently, they won't look you in the eye anymore. Why cannot the Congress file articles of impeachment every single time the president does something illegal? You may not be able to get him impeached immediately, but if every single time it comes to the floor and gets discussed, those things pile up and pile up and pile up and pile up, and eventually some of those Republicans are going to say, I can't keep doing this anymore. They are right.
Marilyn, thank you.
So,
Senator Coons.
Thank you for the question. Some of you know I have voted to convict President Trump twice in impeachment trials in the Senate of the United States. I read closely all the calls I get from you every week. And for weeks, I've been getting calls saying, impeach Trump now. Impeachment begins in the House, and it requires a majority of the House to vote articles of impeachment. I'll encourage our Congresswoman to speak to that for a moment. But impeachment is like a trial where the grand jury is the House. And if the grand jury, the House, doesn't return the indictment, the impeachment doesn't make it to the Senate. The point you made, that I'll speak to again for a moment, is, have they no shame? And the answer is yes. There's a number of them that do, who I text and talk with and engage with regularly. Not a lot, but a few. This week, literally a dozen Republican senators, including 2 this morning about AmeriCorps, who are friends, who I've worked with, who know better. I reach out to them regularly and say, stand up. For the love of God, you cannot cut Medicaid. You cannot cut Meals on Wheels. You cannot cut AmeriCorps. You know better than to betray Ukraine. You know better than to turn your back on medical research. You know better than to stand with this guy you voted to confirm who's giving away our national secrets. I hector them. And hopefully, at some point, we will find 4 that are willing to vote for anything that slows him down.
Thank you so much for that question. And I want to say to Senator Coons and Senator Blunt Rochester, when she was in the House, these 2 leaders have voted twice to use the constitutional mechanism to hold this president to account. One, after he tried to blackmail Ukraine, and once after the insurrection. Donald Trump is the most impeached man in American history. I'm going to be completely real. So first off, if articles of impeachment were filed in the House right now, they would go nowhere. They wouldn't even get a hearing. There would be no conversation about it. There wouldn't be a hearing on it. There would not be a dialogue in a formal matter, in a formal way in the House. We have to fight hard, and we have to fight smart. I believe this president has violated the law and violated the Constitution. We have to convince the rest of this country, we have to convince more people in this country, not just that this president is doing a bad job, which we are doing, and we are doing successfully, but we have to convince people that him violating the law and the Constitution matters and requires urgent action. I doubt that the public is with us at this point on that issue yet. And so even if power was different in the House, even if power was different in the Senate and you would need a massive supermajority, we would need more than 4 Republicans, more than a bare majority in the Senate to remove him from office through that constitutional process. The reality is that the public is with us because even as the most impeached man in American history, that didn't stop him. And so I think we've got to make sure that we are educating the public about the consequences of this president's actions, not just in their daily lives, but why it matters when he violates due process. If he can send people to a foreign gulag without any trial, how do we know that they're not going to send an American citizen? Indeed, just yesterday we found out that they deported a 2-year-old American citizen because there was no process. If there is no process to guarantee that they are not deporting or sending off to a foreign gulag an American citizen, then that means they can send American citizens off to a foreign gulag, and there is no process to stop them, which means none of us are safe. We have to educate the public, move the public on these issues so that they demand the kind of accountability and that there is an election that results in the majorities necessary to truly hold him to account.
I also want to thank Marilyn for your question, because inherent in it is do something. What can we do? And I think it's important. I was in the House when we went through the impeachment trials and process and all of that. And to our Congresswoman's point, and to our Senator's point, while we don't have the mechanism at this point, or the votes, I mean, some of us saw Hamilton. We don't have the votes right now, okay? But what we do have, and what you must continue to do, is put the pressure on. The pressure has already gotten some Republicans to join us, most recently on this whole crazy, reckless tariffs non-strategy. For the first time, we actually had Republicans vote with us on Senator Kaine led a bill to say these tariffs against Canada, our friend, are ridiculous. And we actually have Republicans vote with us. Next week, we are going to have, it's a joint resolution that Senator Wyden is leading to say, again, you can't have it both ways. You can't say this is an emergency, but yet and still you want to negotiate with 100 different countries, which is ridiculous. And so I believe we will probably get Republicans there. The other thing on pressure is your stories. It is so important that you continue to reach out to our offices. We're going to have, and some of you may have seen it, we have a portal that we are putting on our website. One is whistleblower, but other is just to hear your stories of the impact of these things, whether it is cuts in Medicaid, whether it is supply tariffs and how it affects your businesses. These things feed into the work that the Attorney General is doing so that we're building the case. Even if we get to, if it goes to impeachment, you're helping build the case. So again, keep up the pressure, build the case, tell your stories, but also recognize that while you've got this here, in other parts of the country where you might have a cousin, an auntie, an uncle, somebody, you need to be talking to them as well so that they're reaching out, because we only need 4 in the House and 4 in the Senate to stand up. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. Sir?
Thank you. This question is specifically for Representative McBride. I've called and emailed your office numerous times. Given everything that you all just said and the severity of our current situation, a handful of your colleagues in Congress have already called for the impeachment of this president. So I'm just asking you, yes or no, I promised this guy a 5-second question, yes or no, will you stand right now to support your colleagues to impeach this president? Yes or no?
If there were articles of impeachment, and there are not formal articles filed right now, I believe this president has violated the law and violated the Constitution. I believe that violating the law and violating the Constitution rises to impeachable offenses. But there are not articles of impeachment before me. I would have to look at those articles, but I believe he's violated law, and I believe there has to be accountability for that. But I got to be honest with you. I've got to be honest with you. The worst thing we can do is slow down public opposition to this president. I'm going to be completely frank. Calling for the impeachment 100 days into his administration, regardless of how warranted, is not where the public is right now. We have to convince people who voted for this president to oppose him, to oppose the job he's doing, and to recognize that there needs to be accountability. And I think sometimes we want to do things that feel viscerally comforting to ourselves in this moment, but don't do the hard work of convincing people to come to our side. Moving public opinion is an art. And we have to fight hard, but we have to fight smart in this moment. And if we go around saying right now we need to impeach this president, it's going to shut off the conversation with the people who just voted 6 months ago for him to be president. We have to bring them along. And I know that doesn't feel viscerally comforting, so while I believe he's violated the law, I believe we have to respond in a smart way that guarantees that we have the votes to hold him accountable when the time comes.
I will take that as a no. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I believe we have a question from the mobile mic in the back. Test.
Good morning. I'd just like to say thank you so much, and I want to give honor to our father. And I also want to give honor to the Fantastic Five. I call you the Fantastic Five. Thank you so much. I'm from Route 9. 3 things I'd like to say. Number one, I know that Senator Blunt Rochester said that, she said, somebody said, I'll pray for you, Lisa. The other one said, give them hell. Well, we pray for you to give them hell. And the last thing I want to say is that I belong to Delaware Concerned Residents for Environmental Justice as well as the 913 Alliance along 9. 2 days, applicants have been calling me for shut-offs, and Lockheed, their assistance was stopped March 31st. They're only taking emergency shut-offs and emergency electric issues. I understand that there were people camped outside of Catholic Charities, I think it's on Green Hill and 4th, and a line had been formed, and they were informed to go to Rose Hill Community Center at Lockheed, which is only taking the emergency shut-offs at that time. I don't know what we're going to do with these people. Number 2, I was also involved in the food closet at Rose Hill, and our deputy's person said, well, she said, we don't have a lot. And she said, this is what's going to happen, because the food bank does not have any more food to give. Once they are finished, that's it. There's nothing else left. And an applicant said to me just yesterday evening, she said, I'm going to be watching, she said, because even my mother needs assistance. She said, and the food stamps, we need food. She has 3 children. So the one thing I want to say is that I pray that the Fantastic Five does give them hell. And the other thing that I hope and pray is that there's a lot of us here who are old enough to remember when we began with 0, when Hope Unborn had already died. And so with that, we did things that we'd never done before. What is it can we all do that we have never done before? We have never spoken and stood together as a people. And this is what we should do.
All right, ma'am, what is your name?
Exactly what the Fantastic Five has said.
What's your name,
My name is Dora Williams.
Dora, thank you very much. Governor Meyer, can you speak to the crisis in utility bills?
Yeah, thank you, Dora. I appreciate you being here. As you spoke, I was thinking of another good friend of mine from Route 9, 13 corridor, Councilman Jay Street, who gave me hell for 8 years when I was county executive and continues to do it, and I love it. He says, when we want to change, we legislate it. If that doesn't work, we litigate it, and that doesn't work, we demonstrate it. And I appreciate what you're saying. What's particularly challenging for me in this moment is how the most vulnerable people are just being cast astray, whether they're immigrants, whether they're our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender brothers and sisters, whether they're, individual women trying to find reproductive rights, whether they're individuals trying to get basic health care. Everyone's being set aside and pushed aside. Many of these programs, like LIHEAP, are partnerships between the state government and the federal government. A lot of the food programs, the state contributes most of the money comes from federal government. Our federal delegation has done extraordinary work in recent years coming out of COVID to make sure that not a single Delawarean went hungry. And that some of those resources were falling off anyway with the end of COVID. You add what the Trump administration do, because they're saying everything's got to end by yesterday, and we understand to families across our state, urban, suburban, rural, Democrat, Republican, it is trauma for them. What we're doing at the state is trying to do everything we can to fill those gaps. I know a lot of that's conversations with the Attorney General, which, what are we at, 17, 18, litigating cases that I imagine if you ask her and her attorneys, they prefer never to litigate. We don't want to spend state resources doing this stuff, but we have to do it because a lot of these programs, there is a requirement under the law because of the work of these legislators and the work of prior presidents. There is a requirement under the law that this money be spent to help the most vulnerable, and we will go to extreme lengths, whether it's legislating, litigating, or demonstrating, to make sure that no one is left behind.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you so much for speaking up. I would love to see you at every event. You're amazing, and here's the truth, and it's really not only terrifying for everyone here, but it is tragic. In the last couple days, I've been to the food bank. I've been to a substance use disorder treatment facility in southern Delaware, and I've been to La Red, which is a healthcare services facility in southern Delaware also that treats Latina and Haitian Creole population. They are all facing cuts. The head of the Food Bank of Delaware called me up. She's just a remarkable person, and she said, Kathy, they stopped delivering food. I mean, she had almost no notice, and the federal government cut off deliveries of produce, of meats, of vegetables, just like that. And they are extremely worried. What happens if people can't shop at the grocery store because they can't afford it? And more people, that is what will happen if he keeps going with these really cruel cuts. And she said, I don't know what we're going to do. We won't have enough food to give them. We cannot, we are America. We cannot let this happen in our country. And so we're going to keep fighting like heck, like hell, whatever the word is that we use. But we have to really keep in mind the nonprofits in our world that are being deeply affected each and every day, and they're using every tool in the toolbox just to keep their doors open. We have to help them.
Sir. Your name, sir.
Good morning. My name is Martin Willis, and I'm a resident of Newcastle, Delaware. I've been a union boilermaker for almost 37 years, working in America's energy infrastructure. And I'm currently working 40 miles northwest of here on a refueling outage at the Limerick nuclear power plant. Our nation is on the brink of electric energy crisis, because of the enormous amount of electricity demands needed to power data centers, AI, Bitcoin mining, and cannabis farming. But what distinguishes Delaware is the fact that our state imports more of its electricity generation percentage-wise than any other state in the union. And we must change that dramatic set of circumstances as soon as possible by seeking bids and proposals to build reliable base load electric generation. This past winter, most Delawareans were shocked to see a spike in their energy bills due to the historic harsh winter. In the years to come, we could face deadly rolling brownouts due to the shortage of natural gas that powers our power plants and heats our homes. Not only that, just wait until in the next few years that we have a summer season like in 2010, when on July 6th and 7th, the state of Delaware last experienced 2 consecutive days of 100-degree temperatures. And with this will bring widespread blackouts throughout Newcastle County and the beach area with the closing of the Indian River Power Plant. To be honest, there is no quick fix to avoid increasing residential electric rates during the next 5 years. But the state of Delaware could start promoting hydrogen instead of electricity for its zero-emission vehicles and using the poultry waste to make renewable natural gas. Thank you.
Martin, right? Martin, thank you. It's a scary situation that he puts out there. Any thoughts from the panel? I'm intrigued by the chickens.
Martin, thank you. I will just briefly say we all worked incredibly hard to get a hydrogen hub grant, as you know, that connects New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware to the hydrogen economy of the future. It's a $750 million grant. It was signed off on by President Biden and the previous Congress. The current administration is this close to canceling that. It is something we've worked with our colleagues from Pennsylvania and New Jersey, with the building trades, with businesses. Folks, I know this isn't universally known, but Newark, Delaware happens to be one of the world's leading centers of hydrogen technology. We have a real opportunity here to grow a business, to produce clean energy, to export it to the rest of the world, and I'm fighting hard, working with Democrats and Republicans, to prevent the shutdown of our hydrogen hub grant.
Martin, thank you for the question. I agree with you 100% that we are, number one, way too reliant on natural gas. And I know that many Delawareans saw that in their bills in January, February, and the coldest days this winter. We also import way too much power. It's not just environmental opportunity, it's a huge economic opportunity. As Senator Coons said, he and then Representative Blunt Rochester really took a leading role in a competitive process, went through years and years of study and competitive grants and won. There were, I think, 7 around the country, and this one hopefully will still be here. What I want to communicate to you and everyone is, regardless how that plays out, and we're doing everything to make sure it plays out positively, we have a plan that we're finalizing now so that not tomorrow, not next year, but within a decade, we will go to 100% renewable Delaware-produced energy. It will not be easy to achieve. I sat several weeks ago at a table, believe it or not, across from Secretary Bessent. I don't know how to say his name, the Secretary of Treasury and OMB, and I was with the governor of North Carolina, Josh Stein, and we were discussing with him the regulatory support, not even money, the regulatory support we needed to get the offshore wind projects unlocked to move forward. And there is outright opposition to many of these things from the federal government. In spite of that, we're going to do everything with solar, potentially with wind, hopefully with hydrogen, and maybe even with a little nuclear to make sure we are moving forward, whether we're using chicken waste or not. We're going to find a way to make it happen.
I just want to very, very, very quickly say thank you again to Martin, the building trades, and others. This work, as has been said, I got on the Committee of Jurisdiction, Energy and Commerce in the House because we knew, first of all, for Delaware, not just energy but environment were important. I am now on the Environment and Public Works Committee in the Senate, and we will continue to fight for and advocate to hold our funding. I think that's one of the bigger issues That's, thank,
All right.
so, So just to finish up the question, so we will continue to advocate. We've also been working with the cabinet secretaries to hold them accountable and to say that money that was appropriated, that Congress passed, is unlawful to be trying to pull it back and pull it away. So thank you, Martin, for your question as well.
I had the over, so I give her credit for the patience. It took her that long. Sir.
Should we, I feel like we should
sure.
address this young woman because, first of all, probably one of the most horrific things that we have seen are wars that our country is involved in, whether it is in Ukraine or whether it is in the Middle East. I was one of the people who very early called for a ceasefire in the war between Israel and Gaza. I've been consistently, would you like me to say my statement or, and anyone else who wants to share? Thank you. I've been consistent in my position on Israel having a right to exist and defend itself, and also on Gaza having the right for self-determination and peace and humanitarian aid. As I said, I called for that ceasefire. I stand by that. One of the reasons for me why I even ran in the first place, as an international relations major, I want to see peace in this world. And we might not always agree on how to get there, but I'm going to continue to stay true to my core of peace. I'm going to continue to always have an open door for people who want to come in and talk to us and to educate us and inform us. And I'm going to continue in that effort. But what I don't want to see is a Mar-a-Lago of the Middle East. And so we will continue to have that open door. I'll turn it over to my colleagues as well on this issue because I think it's a very important one that we address.
Thanks, Lisa. And I hope we'll get back to the folks who are waiting patiently to ask their questions and not simply answer questions that are shouted at us. I can't understand your question.
We really
If
can't
you'll let
hear
me
you, so
try to
it's kind of
answer,
a waste
maybe
of
you'll be
time.
satisfied. Folks, we've literally got hundreds of people here, and we have maybe 24 who've been waiting patiently. Someone jumped the line, came up front, yelled at us, and so we're changing the focus to answer one question. And I'd love to answer the question if I could.
Yeah,
Who knows, I might be able to answer what she's yelling about. First, I have not enjoyed or appreciated that almost every week for the entire time there's been a war in Gaza, folks have stood across the street from my house with bullhorns and drums and yelled and protested, waking up all my neighbors, and spent hours expressing very angrily their perspective. But I will never stop fighting for their right to do that. In this country, you know, frankly, if you wonder why it's hard to have a reasoned conversation on this topic, this might prove the point. Let me make two simple points if I can. I'm not going to let this man stop me from answering your questions. First, every single week, I get a summary of what Delawareans reach me about. the calls and emails I get. And week after week after week, I get phone calls asking me to sanction Israel or to cut off funds for Israel or to stop supporting arms for Israel. And every single week, I get more calls and letters asking me to support Israel and to oppose Hamas. There are deep and strong feelings about Israel, Hamas, and Gaza in our community. But frankly, screaming at me doesn't move me in a positive direction. So, I was the chair of the committee that funds all of our foreign assistance in the last Congress. Honestly, please stop yelling or be removed. Folks, I think I've said my piece.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We gave her a chance.
Eject.
So I will also add, I like my colleagues here, before I was elected, long before I was elected, called for a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza. And I think the challenge in foreign policy is that often there are no easy answers, straightforward solutions, and we have to recognize that building a sustainable peace in the Middle East is a challenge. I wish there was a magic wand. I wish there was an easy button that we could press to protect our democracy or to stop conflict. But from February, I believe it was, when many of us spoke out and called for a ceasefire, I have been clear that I believe that we need a safe and secure Israel that maintains its right to defend itself, and the Palestinian people deserve life, liberty, and self-determination. It's why I've been clear that I will not give up on a Palestinian state. And it's also why here in the United States, as we consistently see these conversations weaponized to abridge people's rights, it's why I have spoken out against the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, because regardless of what you think about what someone is saying, regardless of their immigration status, every person in this country has the right to free speech. And they should not face imprisonment. They should not face deportation when they peacefully express that opinion. And I will not let anyone disingenuously use a conflict in the Middle East to abridge the rights of anyone in this country.
Back to the line. Your patience, sir. Go ahead.
My name's Clem Dinsmore. I'm a resident of Wilmington. I'm interested in understanding what you know as to the whether and the degree to which prominent leaders of the business communities around the country, including businesses that do business in red states, have communicated their opposition to the behaviors of the Trump administration, and not simply the behaviors associated with tariffs. What I know is that officers and directors of companies have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to assess and manage material risks to their enterprises. And what I further know is the president and his cabinet are aggravating materially all of those risks. So logically, the business leaders should be standing up to the behaviors of the Trump administration.
Tariffs. Yeah, go ahead, Senator. Thank you. Briefly, not enough. Every business leader who comes in to meet with me from a company, small, medium, or large, that complains about the threats to rule of law, the challenges of the tariffs, the unpredictability of our environment, meaning the economic and the legal and the regulatory environment, I encourage them to speak up to the administration and to those in Congress who are supporting it. You asked not just about the unpredictability of the tariffs, but the risk and the unpredictability of President Trump and his cabinet officials going after colleges and universities, law firms, reporters, doing things that are well outside the system that has made us the most prosperous and stable country on earth. They are operating well outside the boundaries of the rule of law, which is what business relies on in order to be successful. Not enough businesses are speaking up and are speaking out.
Yeah.
Attorney General.
You ask a really good question, and I, of course, agree with Senator Coons. Not enough people are speaking out, not enough businesses are yet speaking out. And it shouldn't all be about the issue of tariffs. It really should be about basic principles and respect for our laws and our Constitution. I was deeply, deeply disappointed when several law firms bent the knee and decided to give probably close to $1 billion worth of free legal aid to a billionaire. It's outrageous, and I deeply, deeply respect those law firms who have stood up and said no. And they're fighting back, and they're suing, and they're winning. It takes tremendous courage, and I realize that with some of these law firms, they may risk going out of business. They're not even allowed in a federal courthouse. They have their security clearances taken away. Their clients aren't going to stay with them. So it's existential to their businesses. But isn't that the time when we need to have that courage? When we all need to say, enough. If you're coming after my neighbor next door, you're going to come after me. Thank you for that question. And attorneys general throughout the country have written, we just authored a new letter to those law firms saying, come on back. Come on back. He is not promising you anything. You're not reneging on anything because he hasn't promised you anything. Come back to democracy, for gosh sakes. Come back to our Constitution and have some courage.
The roving mic, is there a question from the roving mic? Is that right? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
My name is Michelle Danzis, and I have 4 issues for the governor.
Let's keep it brief, please.
Oh, very. HB 140, when are you going to sign it? The second.
End of life option.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Oh, the second question is Constitutional Amendment SB 294. The first leg is passed. When do you expect the next leg to go to vote in the Assembly?
294.
294.
What is it? 294.
Voting rights? The third one is, would you support a bill in the General Assembly to put a 2.5 cap on rental agreement renewals?
And lastly?
And lastly, I am under the impression there is an amendment somewhere about bodily autonomy, and I can't find any information on it.
And your name again?
My name is Michelle Danzis.
Michelle, thank you. All right, rapid fire.
1, HB 140, medical aid in dying. I want to sign all these things right away when I support them as soon as they pass. There are a lot of senators and representatives who've worked and people in the community who've worked very hard for years, so we're scheduling it. I think it's happening in the next week or two, this signing. The vote. Senate Bill 294, the Voting Rights Constitutional Amendment. As governor, I don't vote on constitutional amendments, but I've expressed support for it and encouraged senators and House members to vote for it. I think in this day and age, nothing should limit anyone who's qualified to vote from voting. We should make it easy. The fourth one, I think, was also a constitutional amendment on bodily autonomy. I know there's a constitutional amendment, Senate Bill 3, Ray, do you know, on reproductive freedom. I don't know if that's what you're referring to. It has gone through the Senate, and I think They have not yet voted on it in the House. Again, it's a Constitution amendment. I don't have a vote on it. A 2.5 times cap on rent control. There are also, I understand the need for rent control. I understand the issues in our rental market right now across our state. I spent some time in New York City where rent control is a mess. Mid-level lawyers making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year who had a friend with a cousin, and so they're able to rent an apartment for $600 a month. There are many studies that show that rent control, though well-intentioned, does not result in the abundance of low-cost affordable housing that's intended. I'm open to creative solutions. I think putting a straight-up cap will limit the amount of affordable housing that developers want to build and will create more problems than it actually solves. But thank you for the question. Questions?
Quickly, Eric.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you all very much for being here. Obviously, this indirectly or directly, the administration has been the focus of a lot of discussions today. So this is a question for our U.S. senators. And my name is Eric Hansen. I actually was a centrist candidate for U.S. Senate in the last cycle. It is incredibly difficult to get to change the influence of the president and the Trump administration. While I was campaigning, I was actually able to convince the Trump administration not to pursue a national abortion ban. So that was good, but it is really hard to convince that administration and influence them. So you talked, Senator Coons, a bit about working with fellow Republicans. The reality is public opinion is not having an impact right now. Working with Republicans is not having an impact right now. Voting no on legislation is not having an impact. So what specifically can we do to have an impact on this president in the way that hopefully I did, but in a bigger way to stop some potentially dangerous policies from moving forward?
I think the answer has to be all of the above. I think public protest, speaking out, participating in events like today, some of the events that Indivisible and others have put together, showing public force and engagement is one. Supporting Kathy Jennings and our Attorney General. There might be other lawyers here, to the extent there are folks in the legal community who want to support groups that are carrying forward these lawsuits, like the ACLU, like Democracy Forward. Going to the courts is a critical next step. I do keep talking to my colleagues because it's what I can do. I talk to my Democratic colleagues to make sure that we are coordinating. I've led letters, I've asked for hearings, I've made phone calls, but I do talk to my Republican colleagues who I think might at some point be persuadable, either because they're going to stand with Ukraine, or they're going to stand up to the tariffs, or they've decided they're not running again and they're willing to finally stand up. But we frankly have to keep doing all of these, because I believe right now President Trump and his administration are on a dangerous trajectory that is hurting our place in the world, taking money away from Delawareans that is already under law allocated to be spent here and to help us, and we will regret the consequences of this administration. So I think we have to try all of the above. Thank you.
To build on that point, because I think it's going to require a multitude of strategies and tactics. I continue to engage with my Republican colleagues, despite what you see from 5 or 6 on the news who seem obsessed with me in weird ways. I'm proud that every bill that I've I live rent-free in their minds, apparently. But despite those 5 or 6 provocateurs who want to employ the strategies of reality TV to get attention and clicks on social media, I continue to build relationships with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, including relationships where, like Senator Coons mentioned, we talk about what's going on from the administration and their opposition. Some of them have spoken out, many of them have not yet. But the one thing I want to say to a part of your comment was, you said that we haven't seen public opinion work. And I disagree with that. It hasn't worked enough, and there's a lot more room for us to grow that public opposition. But I do see seeds of hope. When the administration put forward that universal funding freeze, yes, our Attorney General took them to court, and yes, the court stopped it. But even before that, this administration was clearly revising and revisiting their approach because of public outrage. As I mentioned at the start, we were able to secure a reversal on the cuts to manufacturing jobs here in Delaware. There's a lot more that we need to do, but as we shift public opinion, and like I said to one of the earlier questions, we clearly have to grow the coalition we have. If you voted against this president in the last election and you're still fired up, fantastic. If you voted for this president in the last election based on his promise to lower costs for you, and you are outraged by policies that you see increasing your cost of living, you're outraged by the deportation to foreign gulags of people without due process, if you are upset and have buyer's remorse, welcome to our club. Welcome to our coalition. We welcome you with open arms. I don't have to agree with you on everything. This is a 5-alarm fire for our country, and we need as many allies, regardless of their political persuasion, as possible in this moment. And as we shift public opinion, Eric, to your question, as we shift public opinion, I do believe that we will see more people speak out, whether it's business leaders, to the previous question, whether it's cultural leaders, and whether it's other political leaders, including Republican politicians, because at the end of the day, whether it's because of their courage or because they begin to fear losing re-election more because they stand with this president rather than losing re-election because they stand up to him as a byproduct of that public opinion change, that is the best path, that is the best lever at our disposal to slow things down, to stop actions from happening, and ultimately to reclaim our democracy.
Again, thank you, Eric, for your question. I always like to go back and remember what did work. And I don't want people to forget that the last time that this president was in power, we had to fight to save the Affordable Care Act. 70 times they tried to repeal, replace, change, strip the Affordable Care Act. But I'm circling back to the very beginning of this conversation. It really was the people who showed up, not just in Washington, but to their senators and their members to say, I've got a pre-existing condition. You will not take this away from me. I've got a kid who's 23 years old. You will not take this away from me. And we fought for that. In this moment, it truly is an all-hands-on-deck moment. It truly is everybody has to do what you can do in this moment. There's individual power, and then there's collective power. The fact that universities have come together and said, I might not have a huge endowment, but I'm going to get into a collective with the Big Ten and say, no, you will not stop us. You will not tell us what we can teach, and you will not go after us. That was collective power. What our attorneys generals are doing across the country, that is collective power. When people said hands off across this country, that was collective power. And so in the next couple of months, when the fight is for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, you're going to see people say hands off, hands off. Then they will feel it. Then they will feel it. So just to round it out, I too, like our colleagues, we come from Delaware. We try to work with people. We try to work across the aisle. The first bill that I introduced was a housing bill because we across this country know whether you're poor, rich, whatever, we don't have enough affordable housing. And I heard it from the people up and down this state. And it's bipartisan. A nursing workforce shortage bill. My second bill, bipartisan. Bill on supply chains and lowering the cost of goods, bipartisan. But the reality is these are not normal times. This is not normal, what we're experiencing. And so I'm proud to be with these folks up here, and I'm especially proud to have been with Sarah McBride and watched how she has handled with grace and style and dignity and brilliance and represented Delaware well for the whole country.
Sir.
My name is Dennis Spivak, and before I get started, I want to say that I'm a Vietnam vet. And I would like, before we go any further, I would like all the veterans in this room to stand up.
That's a terrific idea. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for bringing that to our attention.
But you've received from the audience praise for what you've been doing. My issue is I think you could be doing a lot more in order to lead, inspire, and to engenize all the people that you're complimenting here for their marches, for their actions. I mean, why aren't you, or some of you, leading some of these marches? Why aren't you, when people are at the Treasury building who've been denied their jobs, why don't you join them? Why don't you join them at the Treasury building? Why don't you make yourselves forcibly removed from the building? Why don't you get thrown in jail? It worked for Martin Luther King, and it can work for you. Why aren't you going around the country like this 84-year-old senator from Connecticut, from Vermont, and getting the people roused up? I mean, they're drawing an AOC. They're drawing tremendous crowds. They're gathering more momentum. That's what you need to do, not just in Delaware, but elsewhere. And so we have all these different things. I mean, were you at the September 5th protest in Washington? I only heard the representative from Maryland there who spoke out. So you lead by example. Make us want to follow you. Energize us.
Dennis, thank you. Besides the fact there are only so many hours in a day, what more do you think you can do?
Dennis, good to see you again. Thank you for your voice and your service. The good news, bad news, is that there are lots and lots of protests and events. So you may have seen at the Treasury building a protest. You may not have seen at the FBI headquarters a protest that I was at. You may have seen some of us speak at one rally in Sussex County. The rest of us may not have been there. The reality of serving 1 million people who want town halls in every county every day and commuting to Washington to do our jobs and cast the votes we are supposed to, is that we do our best to be representing you there and here.
But
I'm not going to argue with you, Dennis.
No, I'm not arguing
Dennis,
with you.
I'm not going to argue with you.
I'm just saying, if you're at the Treasury building or you're at another building and you stay there, why don't you just stay there until you're forcibly removed?
Dennis, I don't think it is a great idea for me to get arrested on your behalf because I don't trust this president to let me out.
We're good? We're good? All right. Dennis, thank you.
Just saying, I do want to say something on this because the senator has shared some of the things that different people have done. And I feel like in this moment, you know, as Sarah said, she's giving you her truth. I'm giving you my blunt. What we don't need to do in this moment is look at somebody else and say, you should do what Martin Luther King did, at least for me, because I feel like each and every one of us has to figure out the thing that works for them. I remember the day that Cory Booker stood for 24 hours. Let me tell you, and I remember saying to myself, wow, why didn't I stand for 25 hours? But I had to take a step back and say this. Number one, Corey called me the weekend before. He called a few of us and he said, I'm about to do this. I don't want to advertise it or anything because I'm not sure what's even going to happen. But I want you to know, I want you to pray for me. I want you to be there. So that day, as we were leaving the floor right before he started, he looked a little anxious. And I just went over to my friend, my brother, the senator, and I held his hand and I said, I'll pray with you. And we prayed on that Senate floor. Later, about an hour or two later, I was there in the room. Nobody at that point, they weren't talking about it. It wasn't everywhere. And Corey just turned the mic to me, and I talked about Delaware, and I talked about some of the challenges with Medicaid cuts and what it would mean. And then throughout the 25 hours, I would just go into the room. Sometimes I would touch his back to see if he was sweating, to make sure he wasn't dehydrated. Sometimes I would just tell our colleagues, don't talk so much so he can talk. And later at the very end, to be there, to witness him break Strom Thurmond's record was so powerful. And while I didn't stand for 24 hours, I felt grateful that I got to do a small part of a big thing that he accomplished. And in this moment, that's what we're called to do. Don't tell each other what to do. My best friend, many of you have heard, when I was running and I was losing weight, Michelle said, I don't have $1,000 to give you, but I can make you beef stew. I can make you pots of spaghetti. She did her part. In this moment, think about what you bring. You bring what you bring to the table. If you can get arrested, get arrested. But I'm going to be honest with you on this too. A lot of black folks are saying, they will really put me under the jail. So don't get mad at each other. This is no time for that. We have got to be like sticks in a bundle, unbreakable. That's the proverb. Sticks in a bundle are unbreakable. Stay strong.
Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Alberta from Wilmington. Hi, Sarah. I have a quick yes or no question. I personally find it a waste of all my outrage to focus on this executive branch. We all know the Congress is a co-equal power. I think complicit and complacent in many ways. My question is, are you willing to either put forth, negotiate, or vote for term limits? Because I believe everyone is worrying about their next election. And actually, I'd like to hear from the governor and
Term limits
Attorney General.
across the board for any office or for a specific office?
Congress.
For Congress.
But I suspect our governor or Attorney General may be there someday.
You asked for a simple answer. This isn't a simple answer.
It is.
Term limits requires a constitutional amendment, and the process for amending our Constitution is incredibly long and complicated,
So
and
you're willing to
unlikely to
pursue it?
succeed, and unlikely to make a difference in this moment.
I'm not only talking about this moment, we know this moment sucks. Seriously. We all have a future investment in this. And if you're going to be here in the future, are you willing to invest in that?
So I'm open-minded on term limits as a concept, but unconvinced that they actually achieve the goals that we want.
How would we know?
Because there are a lot of states that have term limits. And
We've
one
never
of the
had federal.
Well, I understand. So a couple things. One, I think it would depend on just in sort of the abstract, I think Senator Coons is 100% right that the reality is that term limits would require a constitutional amendment that would not only take a while, but is unlikely to succeed. But talking about the actual policy, I think it would depend on how long you have term limits. Because I got to tell you, if we have a Congress full of people who are still learning how to get through the hallways before their time is up, as is the case in some places, then you don't have the benefit of institutional knowledge. You don't have the benefit of lessons learned. You don't have the benefits of people who've been through serious challenges before, figured out how to navigate them even when the answer wasn't seemingly obvious. John Lewis served in Congress for decades. I wish I could have served with John Lewis to talk with him about that. And he would not have been able to had there been term limits. The other thing I will say about term limits that people don't talk enough about is that when you have rapid universal turnover in a legislature, I think you should have turnover, right? I think you have a lot of benefit when you've got the creativity and imagination of young, new people with the experience and wisdom of longer-term members. I think that creates an environment where there's better outcomes often. But one of the things that we see when we have term limits, particularly if they're too quick, is that when you lose the members, the elected members who have that institutional knowledge, that experience, what ends up happening is that the lobbyist class, the unelected staffers, they grow in power. They grow in influence because they are the ones that have the institutional knowledge, and we know knowledge is power in these systems. And so I think term limits are often feel like a straightforward answer, but I do think that there are some unintended consequences, and so it would depend on the proposal before me whether I would support it.
All right, we'll debate it later.
Thank you, Alberta. For those in the back of the line, I don't know. Sir.
Sorry, a little tall. Hi, my name is Halim. I'm from Newark. I've lived here all my life, went to Newark High School, the whole shebang. So I'm going to follow up on what we witnessed a bit earlier. We talk a lot about protests. Sorry, was that not close enough? I saw
you're
the
fine.
hand
Speak
go
up a little bit.
No, so we talk a lot about protests. We talk a lot about collective action and things that have to go through to get change. And yet, here we are with Senator Coons in particular critiquing the kind of protest that actually gets change. The guy who was on this side in front of me before asked, why aren't you guys getting arrested? I understand getting arrested is a big ask, but no protest that doesn't cause discomfort will lead to actual change. So yes, we can be upset, and I know a lot of us here are waiting in line. I'm also waiting in line, and we got interrupted. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to protests, we need to put our feet to the flame. And we do need to interrupt. We need to disrupt. We need it to be uncomfortable. If the protest is something that makes you feel comfortable, and I understand it's annoying to have people outside your door, Senator Coons, if you do not feel uncomfortable, then how are we going to affect change? It doesn't happen. And talking about the issue of Palestine, which I do want to double down on, because guess what? It's not a war in the Middle East. It's not a war in Gaza specifically. It is a war in Palestine. They are fighting not just the Hamas, they are fighting the Palestinian people as a whole. The entirety of Gaza is flattened. There are currently, this has been reported on, no safe zones in Gaza. The Israeli military has stopped declaring any safe zones in Gaza, which means everywhere is a place where innocent civilians are being killed. The low estimate, 51,000. The high estimate, over 200,000. The UN expects that about 1 million children are starving in Gaza.
Okay, I'm going to ask you now, what is the question?
The question is, 1, why do you continue to support a state that is an apartheid state as confirmed by the ICJ? 2, I understand our need to support our allies, but this is you are sending money that could be used for Americans to another country so that way they can bomb civilians. And 3, why wouldn't you support Senator Sanders' bill to cut off that funding?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for delivering a focused and purposeful question, and thank you for your engagement. I don't think that the only way that protests make change is when they are aggressive and personal and disruptive. I think it is possible to persuade people. And one of the things my colleague and friend, the Congresswoman, said earlier is there are moments when persuasion is more important than the protests that may feel good at the instant. I think you were talking about impeachment and the importance to persuade a majority. The reason I reference the letters that I get from Delawareans every week on the issue of Gaza, the Palestinians, Hamas, and Israel is week after week after week, the overwhelming majority of Delawareans who've reached out to me have urged me to continue to support Israel, which I do. I support Israel's right to exist and to defend itself. And frankly, President Trump has made the region more unstable, more unpredictable. One of the things President Biden did that I supported and I was proud of was he pulled together a coalition of countries to defend Israel when Iran attacked it directly. I have also urged, I'm not going to have an argument.
I want you to have the full context. They bombed Iran first. That happened. Use the full context of the
Okay. The larger point that I'll conclude my point unless you'd like to keep having an argument. I support Israel's right to exist. I went to Israel 2 weeks after Hamas attacked. Hamas is a terrorist organization that has continued to use civilians, children, hospitals, churches as human shields against ongoing attacks. I suspect there's not a single one of us in this room that is happy or comfortable with the deep suffering of the Palestinian people, with the deprivation of their rights, with the way that Gaza has been flattened. I worked hard to sustain and restore funding for UNRWA. I have worked to persuade colleagues. I have visited every country in the region, and obviously I have failed to sustain funding for UNRWA. The majority in the Senate cut it off. If you don't know what UNRWA was, it's the UN organization that funds the vast majority of support for Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jordan, and throughout the region. This has been a painful conflict for which there is no good or easy end. But I continue to believe in the right of Palestinians to self-determination, in the possibility of a two-state solution, in the urgency of a ceasefire, and in the importance of insisting on Israel being able to defend itself in a dangerous and difficult region. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I have to be the bad guy now who says we're out of time. We apologize to everybody in line, but my understanding is constituent services is in the lobby and can help you with the problems or hopefully get some answers if you have them. But we did want to give our panel one last encouraging word, hopefully, before we embark on our weekends. Senator Coons, you just spoke. Does somebody else want to go first, or Senator Coons, do you want to? All right. Okay. Well, Attorney General Jennings then.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you to my colleagues on Team Delaware, and thank you for everyone showing up today on a Saturday and taking time to talk about extremely important issues that impact you and impact other people we care about in our state and across our country. I just want to say that the issues that divide us, we've got them, but if there ever was a time in this country when the values that unite us were more important, this is it. We have to come together. We have to speak with one voice because there will always be disagreements. That's healthy. That's America. That's who we are, especially Democrats. But I can tell you this, that when the future of our democracy is at stake, when our Constitution is being torn apart and we are on the path to dictatorship, let's come together, let's love each other, let's care for each other, let's push forward. We will win if we do.
Thank you, Attorney General. Governor Meyer.
When I was a kid growing up in Wilmington, one of my teachers was a woman named Dorothy Finger. Dorothy Finger was a woman who, as a child, was in the Holocaust. And managed to escape it and make her way to Delaware. Many in her family did not. As a kid, she taught me and many others, if you see injustice, call it out and do something about it. I always thought about that in respect to foreign affairs. I personally spent time as a diplomat in Iraq, embedded with the Army for a year, and it was a strong principle by which I lived my life. Now more than ever, we need Delawareans and we need Americans to heed the call of Dorothy Finger. When you see injustice, call it out and do something about it. In fact, on the darkest days and nights when I get some of this national news, I think it's the only thing that's left for our country, is all of us calling out injustice and doing something about it. It's inspiring to me, and I think to all of us, to see so many of you coming out today, fired up, saying, why aren't you locking yourself to buildings in the Treasury and getting arrested and sent to El Salvador, Senator Coons? But I think beyond the humor, we need to recognize this is a very fraught moment for our country. Our country has had very serious and fraught moments before, but this is one of those moments, and it's up to all of us, individually and collectively, to make sure we control our community, our state, and our country, not based on people, but based on principle. That's who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Representative McBride.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much to my colleagues. And thank you, most importantly, to every single person who joined us for this conversation in person and those joining us virtually. What is very clear is that there is a lot of fear right now. There's a lot of fear in this room. I hear it every single day as I'm traveling across the state of Delaware. And often when that fear comes, we lash out at our allies. We lash out at those who we are fighting alongside. And that's understandable. But as someone who has been an advocate and is now an elected official, as someone who is living a life that seemed so impossible to me as a kid that it was almost incomprehensible, living a life that now is real, as a student of history who learned about the civil rights movement here in this building, one of the things I know is that the only way change comes is when we have a multitude of strategies and tactics. No one approach works. Every single one of us has a role, and we are one voice, but we speak in different ways. And I know that the Civil Rights Act would not have passed without Martin Luther King and John Lewis as an advocate getting arrested. And I know it would not have worked, it would not have passed if there weren't people on the floor of the House and the Senate who were doing their jobs that they were elected to do, to vote and to speak on the floor. We need advocates, we need activists, we need elected officials. And my guarantee to each and every one of you is that I will not let anyone, from provocateurs in the House of Representatives who want to talk about bathrooms and pronouns, to an authoritarian wannabe in the White House, I will not let anyone stop me from doing the job that you all elected me to do, and that is to bring your voices to the floor of the House of Representatives to vote on your behalf and to fight hard and to fight smart. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Mount Rochester.
First, let me thank you, Chris, for doing an incredible job. Give Chris a round of applause. Thank you to Senator Coons and all of our teams. Can you please give a round of applause to our teams, to the security, the police, the school, and my colleague, Senator Coons, who, as someone who is now a freshman in the Senate, I didn't imagine it to be like this. I really didn't. I didn't imagine, even as a kid who grew up in the 1960s when we talked about civil rights and black power and women's liberation and give a hoot, don't pollute. I didn't imagine it being like this. But what I can say is, even in the moments where I feel scared, angry, unsure, I know, this I know, because of what we have been through. That we will make it. We will make it. We will make it through this. And as was said, I got the chance to sit next to John Lewis and to hear his wisdom and his quiet temperament, but his strength, and to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with him, and to stand as the bridge shook with the history and the memories of people who fought for us to have this place now. And I stood in that gallery on January 6th. And as I said, on that day, I decided to lean forward. And so I hope that through all of this, you take care of yourself. It is hard right now, no matter who you are. For our veterans, thank you for pointing out our veterans. I met a veteran this week who was a student at Rutgers. And another student asked, why should I tell people to even vote? And he said that he was a part of Iraqi freedom, and he watched how excited these citizens were to get the right to vote. And so the thought that the SAVE Act would disenfranchise people in this country, we're going to fight for our right to vote. But what he said as well is that when people say thank you for your service, he says it rings hollow a lot of times. And he turns to them and says, but did you vote? Did you vote? That's the least we can do. So to all of you who are standing up in whatever way it is that you are, thank you. I thank you. The seniors up and down this state who said, don't take my Medicare and don't take my Social Security, thank you. The parents who've got kids with disabilities and are scared because they're trying to shut down the Department of Education, which they must come through Congress to do. For all of the people fighting for clean air and clean drinking water, like on the Route 9 corridor, for all of us, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you've done. We're going to make it.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for your engagement, your attention. We have to pull together. We've got a lot of different ideas, a lot of different resources, a lot of different abilities. And one of the questions I have as we leave is what's next? On the floor of Congress, what's next is a massive Republican-only bill, and this is tough to track because of the language. It's the reconciliation bill. But it's not about reconciling us to each other. It's about using an obscure law to overcome the filibuster in the Senate, to pass a bill that will cut billions and billions of dollars from food assistance to low-income families and children, Medicaid that supports 1 out of 4 Delawareans, Medicaid that funds mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, seniors who can live with dignity, and children who are born. 4 out of 10 children who are born in Delaware, their childbirth is covered by Medicaid. Why on earth would they try and cut all of the things we've talked about? From money for libraries to AmeriCorps, from money to manufacturing extension, to money for farmers and veterans, to money for Medicaid. What's the point? The point is the biggest tax cut in American history, principally targeted on benefiting billionaires and the most profitable companies. That's what's next. And we need your voice to be engaged in standing up against it, in encouraging us and others to vote against it, and keeping us clear that that's the main thing right in front of us. What else is next? Your prices are going to go up. If you care about rent and affordable housing, wallboard comes from Mexico. Plywood comes from Canada. We're not going to have more affordable housing with higher tariffs. For the folks who voted for Trump because he would bring costs down, he's bringing costs up for everything from gas and electronics to fruit and vegetables. So frankly, we all need to engage with those who chose not to vote last time. It's hard to persuade people who voted for Trump that they made a mistake, but he's making it easier. But for those who decided to stay home because they didn't like the choice they had, we've got elections coming up. In New Jersey and in Virginia, there was just an election for a Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin. We need to be engaged and vocal locally and nationally. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being engaged. And thank you for being hopeful. Because frankly, we have a long road ahead of us. The midterms are a long way away. We need to show that we can be together, purposeful, positive, and make a difference in the months and weeks ahead. And last, as a lawyer, on May 1, I'm joining in a National Day of Action to take my oath once again to uphold the rule of law, because it is the very foundation of our system. Thank you all for being here today, and thanks for the chance to work for you.
One of the things I love about Delaware is I don't think there's any other state in the nation where you could get 5 people to this level of government on the same stage on a Saturday morning. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Keep fighting a good fight. I'll talk to you Monday.